Today we have to begin with something that may be very disturbing to some of you, and I have to warn you, not just for you, but those who will be listening. It may be because this is going to shake our American culture. It's going to shake what we've known all our lives as Americans about something we believe in very much about medicine, and where do we go with that? I did not want to do this talk. It was not, it's not on the top of my favorite list for talks to present, but God has been hounding me for many, many months to present this. And I kind of said, no, I'm not doing it. I says, too many people are not going to want to hear this because they're so accustomed. And he kept bugging me, and I had to confess disobedience. And I said, okay, I will do it. So I want you to understand that this is something that God has shown me through many, many years of praying healing prayers with people. This is not something that this church necessarily is going to dictate. It's not something that OSL dictates, so I'm speaking for me. So don't leave the group. Don't walk out if you hear something you don't like. Okay, this is me. You can tar and feather me, but do not feel I'm representing the church or OSL. Okay? This talk, as I say, it's been revealed to me, and it's just I'm going to give you evidence of how this came about over years and years of just praying with people and taking notes and seeing what God has revealed. And so this talk is going to begin with the deception of pharmaceuticals. And next time we're going to move into an option for pharmaceuticals, which is going to talk about God's healing power and how we can use alternative things of this world as opposed to this. But God told me to begin here to kind of clear this path. And so I'm going to work through this and explain this has been my research, this has been my experience, and we'll see what your experience has been. To begin, the enemy has completely deceived us, and it is all out of fear. We are all completely deceived in this country especially. He has us so terrified that we believe that without our medications, we are going to stay sick, and maybe we will never get well. Our sickness is going to be prolonged, going to get worse, and most likely we will die. This is what many, many people believe when I talk with my clients about medications. This is true. This is what they literally feel. This is my own experience. This isn't things I've read. This is just things I've listened to my clients over the years, what they tell me. And it's been my experience that there is no middle ground. Many, many of my clients that I've shared with, what I'm about to share with you, never came back and are happily taking their medications to this day. And they're okay living with all the side effects of their medication. Other clients have chosen a completely different path and are living in victory. And that's the victory we want to lead you to, that all of us could experience. So let me begin with a very basic understanding that will set your mind in a certain place. The Greek word that we get the word pharmacy and pharmaceuticals from is pharmakia. And the literal translation of this word is witchcraft. The definition of witchcraft is to control someone for evil purposes. We'll talk more on that in a little bit. So everything on this earth has frequency. We were designed by God to operate within a certain frequency. We are wired for love, which means we are wired to operate within all the frequencies of the gifts of the Holy Spirit, all the natural things that God has provided, all positive feelings and emotions, everything good that and wonderful He has created for us on this planet. We are wired for that. Our body reacts with that, responds with that, and only operates well in this framework. When we introduce negative emotions, lies, and man-made substances into our body, such as processed foods, preservatives, drugs, mind-altering drugs, our body doesn't know what to do with them. because they are a completely foreign substance that God designed for our body to operate in, they begin to destroy the organs they are stored in. All these different foods that we eat, all these different processed things, they begin to get stored in our body. Your body is trying to cope with it. It's trying to get rid of it. It's trying to eradicate it from its body, so it encapsulates it and it stores it, and it begins to destroy the organ that it's in. It seemed like a really, really good idea. It seemed like it would help. And even at first, they did begin to work, and they seemed like a great idea. Maybe it really tasted great, or it really seemed to help the problem in my body. Gradually, we learned that they are destroying because they are the wrong voltage. So this part of this message is actually scientific. It is true, it's proven. You can believe as you read the Bible that God has designed this world perfect. Everything in it is perfect, and would have stayed that way until we began altering it. We alter everything. We change everything so that it looks more beautiful, it tastes better, it grows quicker, it lasts longer. And these things actually have destroyed the original content. Your body doesn't recognize it, doesn't know what to do with it. And so because it's the wrong frequency, it begins to destroy the organ that it's stored in. It's like taking your new electric drill that you find that for this project I'm working on, I needed to run faster. You get the bright idea that you're going to plug it into a 220 outlet, right? So it seems like a good idea because it runs really, really fast, and then it burns up. And that's the story, what man-made altered substances do to our body. They appear like they are a great idea, fulfilling a need, but then they destroy us. Pharmaceuticals definitely fall into this category. These substances have been so altered and combined chemically into new substances that your body doesn't recognize and does not want. So while your body is busy trying to destroy them and eliminate them from your body, these drugs are busy destroying you, destroying your body. And this is what I share with many, many of my clients. At this point, many of you could say, you do not know what you're talking about. I resent what you're saying because medications have saved my life. They saved my daughter's life, or they're keeping me alive. See, I do not deny any of this because, like the electric drill, they will work for a while. And then the side effects kick in, which I hear about every day. Because I always ask my clients when they come in with bags full of medication, and they seem to be working. At least when they come in for me, they're usually no longer working, but they say they work for a while, and then we begin looking at the side effects that they are experiencing, and they are absolutely horrendous. And these side effects is what we want to look at. I had one client that came in, and she was on 4 different types of medications. And obviously they were not working because she was still a frantic mess. And she was determined she was going to take these. And so because she felt so reliant on them, because she was suffering from anxiety, coming from depression, and all these things that she was in such a fluster her whole life. And we discovered through prayer and through counseling that we could take a different route. We could eliminate the anxiety, eliminate the stress, and eliminate the depression. We began to receive results with that, but we still had the impact of these medications. And she was determined to do both. So I said, well, for your assignment, I want you to go home and write down the side effects of these 4 medications you're on. And she came back with 4 pages of information. 4 pages of side effects. I was shocked. And so I said to her, I want you to check off how many of these side effects you're experiencing. And I was amazed to see checking. And she was literally 3/4 of the side effects of each page she was filling up. And I love to see how, I said how we combine these different medications, which does even more damage. We found out that the medication that was to help her with her anxiety was causing depression. And one of the side effects of the depression medicine was anxiety. So the invitation I'm giving you today is for something without side effects. Something we are wired for because it is under God's control and not Satan's. It includes the healing power and authority he has given us in Jesus' name. We saw that the literal translation of the word pharmakia is witchcraft, which is the means in which Satan and his evil spirits operate. The word witchcraft means to control someone for evil purposes. The enemy has had his hand in pharmaceuticals from day one. So his goal is to control us, to keep us under his control. If he does this, he can keep us under his oppression, and we become subjects under his authority. The enemy wants us addicted, and he does not care what we are addicted to, as long as it is something that brings harm to our body, our mind, and our spirit. He wants us addicted. He will use any means, and he has found a huge outlet in pharmaceuticals to do this. So I am going to prove to you that you are being deceived, that you are being controlled by the enemy. So the literal translation of pharmakia should be enough to convince you that Satan is behind the pharmaceutical industry. So you should not be surprised to learn that you're being lied to. The medications are no different than any other lie told to you by the enemy. And this is the heart of this, what I have learned. They actually do the opposite of what you are told they will achieve. Now this is going, and usually does, blow many people's mind, because they cannot imagine that a loving doctor would give this to me. The fact is simple, he is loving, and we don't deny that. The fact is he is unaware, as we are all unaware, but God can reveal it to you. And many people come in, when it comes through the prayer, God reveals what's really going on, and they say, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. I felt it, I knew it was causing this, and I didn't know what to do. I was afraid, and so I took it. You see, the enemy is no fool. He would never sell you a defective product. You would discard it, and you would never recommend it to anyone else, right? That is a really bad salesman. He would sell you a product, though, that worked well, and then gradually began to work less and less until it barely worked, and maybe no longer worked at all. But out of fear, you continue to use the product in hopes that it will begin to work again. Now, this is what many people have told me. I'm not just making this up out of my head. This is over years of people telling me something went wrong, it no longer worked, but I still kept taking it. For example, this fellow Luke came to me. He was experiencing uncontrollable fits of rage, and he had been experiencing them for 10 years and has been on and occasionally off 2 different mood stabilizers for the past 10 years. See, while they helped at first, after a few years, the fits began to actually get worse until they were getting worse and worse until he lost his job and he lost his gift and call to be a priest. He was expelled from the seminary. Everything went wrong that could possibly go wrong. But because of these horrific rages, fits of rage, you can imagine you're studying to be a priest and this is the way you're behaving. I don't think so. So the enemy was using these fits of rage and actually increasing them to expel him from the seminary so that he would lose his gift and call. We are working now in restoring his gift and call, returning to the seminary. And he never imagined that it was possible. But as long as I'll tell you what happened. And so he was surprised to learn that these medications were filled with curses and spirits. And I will get into that in a little while, explain exactly what they were. But God reveals this, and he will reveal it to you. God will reveal exactly even the names of spirits, the amount of curses. He will tell you what is going on, but you have to know to ask him. You have to even know that it's possible. So that's why I'm here today, to tell you this really is existing, and once you become aware, you can use this in your ministry. You can help people. You can begin to lead them to a different path. So he was very, very amazed to find out, because this was actually given to help him. And a good loving doctor gave them to him and said, this will help you with your fits of rage. But they were getting worse and worse and worse. And so he said, I'm confused. He said, if these medications are so demonic, how come the fits of rage were less when I took the medication than when I didn't? Can you guess why? The enemy is a good salesman, and he's no fool. If they got worse or they didn't work, you would stop taking them. So he has to make it look like they are working. And he does this all the time. He is in control of those fits of rage. So he decides when you'll have them and when you won't. Because of the spirits that came in through these drugs, they literally began to control his mood swings. I have people with, the enemy is controlling people's blood pressure. He's controlling their different conditions. He's controlling their diabetes because of what we're putting in our body. The enemy becomes in control, but we allow this. See, by taking this in, we are giving the enemy permission to harm us, because we are putting in toxic things into our body, which is sin, which gives the enemy legal ground to attack us. And that is really the root of this. What gives him authority to attack us? These things are toxic. They are not recognizable to your body. They're the wrong voltage. And just like plugging your drill into a 220 outlet is sinful because you're ruining your drill, it is sinful to put toxic things in our body. So he was very surprised to see. So I explained, this makes perfect sense. The enemy is a good salesman. He wants to keep you on these. He has a plan. So he allows them to show some benefit. Otherwise, you would discard them and you would stop using them. But what happens is slowly, they get things worse and worse and worse. It happens gradually over 10 years. It's like the story of putting the frog in the saucepan that you're heating up. It slowly heats up until he perishes, right? Well, that is basically what's happening to us. The enemy does it so slowly. He's very patient. He just wants to hurt you enough that he can either eliminate you from your gift and call, which is the main reason what I see. It's not just to make you sick. Mostly good people seem to be attacked because it eliminates from their ministry, eliminates from their gift and call to share the gospel, to share the love of Jesus. And everyone that comes in to my office is interested in their gift and call. And I'm telling you, I could pretty much say most have been shut down, and it's because of sickness, because of some form. And when we trace it back, there is a connection to the pharmaceuticals they are taking. So we learned that these fits of rage, that the drugs were actually causing fits of rage to increase and not decrease. So how does this deception reach us? It begins with intense greed. So the enemy has made it possible for pharmaceutical companies to make unimaginable, incomprehensible profits and to obtain enormous power. Controlled by spirits of power and greed, these companies become consumed with what? Getting more profits, more money, and more power. It's a spirit that is so powerful, and you see it across the world through companies. Anyone who gets infected with this spirit they don't even care about the money as much as the power. But the money gives them great power. It gives them great ability to do what they need to do. Because their priority is profits and not healing, they knowingly produce medications that they know are addictive and extremely harmful, with massive side effects, including death. We see where even look at even the cigarette companies. They know they're putting, it's not so much the tobacco, but the over 200 chemicals that they put in the cigarettes. For what reason? To make them addictive. Now, is that as evil as you can get or what? They don't care about any of your health. They're only concerned about profits. So with their multi-million-dollar profits, they're able to control the medical universities. So they give huge grants to institutions with one requirement. What is it? You follow our way. We get to write the curriculum. And the curriculum is you study our medications. And what it has turned into is that every class in nutrition, one by one, I've been studying, my mom was a nutritionist, so we were always concerned about what's being taught in the medical schools. And we watched how one by one, every class in nutrition was eliminated until there was only one left, and then that was eliminated. And so doctors are in no requirement to study anything alternative, anything natural. Ask any doctor, and I've done this many, many times, just ask them, tell me what you studied in school. And they'll say, well, we studied anatomy and physiology and a book that was this thick on every medication known to man. And they study that, and they have to learn every one and what diseases it can treat. That's what they learn. I do not blame doctors. I blame the greed and evil power coming from pharmaceutical companies controlling the medical schools. And they want these grants, they want to continue, so they agree. What do they care? They are producing doctors as they promised, and they're sustaining themselves and making good profits themselves. You cannot buy an ear of corn in this company that is non-GMO. You cannot. It is completely outlawed, and I have friends in Indiana who are farmers, and they explain this to me. It's like it is completely beyond our control. They find a way. You cannot buy seed. And if you do, if you found a way, you mysteriously find your farm burnt to the ground. And he's told me many stories that this is real. Your farm is either foreclosed on or burned up, or he said, and you know what, and after all that, it really doesn't matter because that seed, the corn, when it's fertilizing, will travel up to 5 miles. So you could have the most wonderful, natural, non-GMO farm. If you could find the seed, a seed from a neighboring farm will come and contaminate yours, and it will no longer be non-GMO. They know the side effects of this product, yet they continue to do it out of greed and profit. So you see, it is very, very real in all industries. Hospitals also receive huge grants from pharmaceutical companies with the requirement that they only prescribe medications. If they try to prescribe something alternative, the grants are shut down. And if you are a doctor working for the hospital, you will be expelled and you will be fined. You are not allowed. You will lose your license if you continue to work for that institution and practice things that are not pharmaceutical. When my brother was 51, he developed horrible brain cancer and geoblastic tumor, which is the most deadly of all kind. And my brother was a nutritionist, my mom was a nutritionist. So they took him in because of all the pressure, and other members of the family, they took him in to see this oncologist, and he said, well, we should do chemo. And this was when they first learned about it. And so my brother said, now wait a minute, he said, so chemo is a poison and to kill this cancer. Yet he says your brain has a brain stem barrier which keeps toxins from entering into your brain. It's a way that God has provided to protect your brain. And so he says your blood barrier will not allow the chemo to enter. So why would you use it? He says, well, maybe it will work. We're hoping that it will work. And then he said, well, doctor, he says, have you ever cured anyone with this tumor using chemo? And he said, no, but maybe your brother will be the first one. And so they just said, we're not doing this. And so then, but he would not follow the treatments that my mom and my brother were following because his wife was very, very anti-nutrition against my mom, and she was totally with the doctors and with the pharmacy. She was with the medical profession. So she was totally on board with that. And she resisted us all the way. So his cancer got worse. They had a surgery. It didn't work. Went on and on. So this tumor is growing in his brain. And so he's in the hospital. And so my mom decides, well, she's going to take it on her own. So being a very devout Christian, she devises this way. So she had learned that the mineral cesium, which you can buy for almost nothing, compared to the $100,000 chemo treatment, would dissolve a brain tumor. Because it's so fine a mineral, it will actually get through the brain barrier, and it's not a poison, so your brain will actually let it in. And she learned that this will dissolve tumors. They would not administer it, they wouldn't let her. She would sit next to him every day, and she filled a bottle with cesium and water. It's clear, and she put a big cross on it and said, holy water. And 3 or 4 times a day, she would spray this all over his chest, and she would rub it in. And it's so fine, it goes right through the skin, and it actually began to dissolve the tumor. Little by little, it began to dissolve it. And the doctors were shocked. They said they only gave him weeks to live, and here we are, 6 months later, he's alive, and he's getting better. They are blown away. These doctors came to my mom and said, whatever you're doing, because she kept preaching, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you try that? And they said, no. He said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. It's working. And she said, would you like to know what I'm doing? No. He said, I will lose my license if he didn't even want to know about it. Now that frightens me a lot. And I can tell you many, many stories of people who have asked their doctor, because being involved in nutrition and healing, we have helped many, many people with alternative methods, and the doctors do not want, because they always say, would you like to know? And they do not want to know, because they don't want to maybe be tempted or realize if I do, I'll find it'll leak out, and I will be out of a job. They will lose their license, and they will be out of a job. It's a very, very true story. So then 4 years later, this was horrific. My sister, gets the same tumor, and we didn't go in. My brother, by the way, wound up going behind our back and getting the chemo and radiation, and that's what killed him. As he was doing fine, all of a sudden it just totally wiped him out. It destroyed everything in his body. He became so weak, then you get like a cold and then you die. And that's what happened. My sister contracted the same disease, and between my brother and my mom, now they had learned even more. They completely shrunk the tumor at home. Never went to the hospital. So this is my own personal experience. I know it's real, and I know the damage that can be done otherwise. The insurance companies, I would think insurance companies have to be receiving large grants from the pharmaceutical companies. Otherwise, someone has to explain to me, how come nothing alternative is covered by insurance? Nothing. Why? When it works. You can see clearly, this clearly works. All these people, hundreds and hundreds of people have been healed. If you think this is upsetting, wait till next time, because we're going to deal with an issue of where we really are with in between. Everyone wants to do both. This is another topic that's about even dealing with God's healing power. See, all this is moving towards something that is so crazy important. We are limiting God in huge ways, and it's because of compromising like this. And so God has led me. This is me. I told you this is my deal. And I see many of you understand that through your experience, and when you see things over and over and over, suppose you're someone who's seen, I've seen this working. I told you, I said, it's saving my life. It saved my daughter's life. It saved my son's life. It's working. How do you argue with that? Well, you look at what's really happening in side effects. There's side effects you may not even be aware of. God has shown me over and over. And then I said, if I'm going to give this talk, I need more proof. I need more evidence. And so in this past year, he's been showing me what's really happening with pharmaceuticals. Because he said, you will have to give this and present it, and you have to at least expose it. Because it follows a principle. It doesn't matter if we're talking about drugs or we're talking about sweeteners, preservatives, chemicals. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. We're talking about chemicals. When you put things in your body, if you're drinking Diet Coke and putting those sweeteners in your body, you're putting all this sugars and processed sugars, and that is the same topic of what I'm talking about. It's a principle. When you put that in your body reacts against it. That's my point. If it is man-made, your body doesn't recognize it. You say, well, it'll recognize a little bit. Well, yes. Can I have a candy bar once a week, once a month? Yes. Your body will deal with it. Trust me. It will deal with it. I'm not that emphatic or that crazy, right? I continued to take a product that I thought was good for me, that it had vitamin B12 in it, 2 good types of B12. It was a little energy drink that we got at Costco that would give me a pick-me-up, and I thought it was nutritious. But I was developing this intense pain in my shoulders that many of you have helped pray for over the years. Intense pain, and I learned, God revealed that it was coming. I learned it through a chiropractor who was studying nutrition, that he says, "What are you taking that stuff for?" He said, "It's full of sucralose." I had no idea. This is an artificial sweetener, and my body especially reacts to it. But all this pain, it goes to your liver, which is connected to these muscles in your shoulders. That pain was coming from the sucralose. It took several years to develop, but it was disguised. That was sin. I had to confess that as sin, and the pain gradually began to go away until it was gone. That was what it was related to. This topic is far-reaching. Anything you put in your body, if it is man-made and altered so that your body doesn't, I'm not talking about heating it up in an oven, but if you alter it chemically, so check your pharmaceuticals, see how they're made. If they have been altered chemically, then your body does not recognize it. It's just, I didn't make this up, it's a principle. When I read the label, in the beginning someone said, "This has sucralose in it." Because when I learned, what is the definition of sin? Willfully doing something that you know is wrong. Well, in the beginning, I did. I missed that little point. So in the very beginning, one of my clients said, "This has sucralose in it. That's a sweetener, artificial sweetener." And I somehow ignored it because, I said, and I made justification like we all do. Well, the good B12 will maybe cover it up. And she said, "Well, it's just a little bit." The point is, I knew it was bad for me, and I took it anyway. And that's what I had to confess. If I had no idea, no, I don't believe it would. But can it still hurt you? Absolutely. You have to know that something is bad. So if my client agrees, this one client, she said, "I know that this Diet Coke is terrible for me." She was even getting curses from it. That's how I knew that it was. And so she continued to take it. The next time she came in, the curses increased because she did nothing about it. She knew it was bad, she admitted it, and she continued to drink it 6 to 7 a day. And because coming to a level of that God could heal her, which is what we're training to do, but you said what? If she did not take the medication, she will die. So that's what I believe. Will that lie carry through? Will that belief carry through? Absolutely. That locks God, because you said without the medication, she will die. That completely eliminates God's healing power. Because the other method that we're training for, we weren't there yet. So yes, medication was needed. Medication, that's why the whole country is on medications, because they do not understand the next principle that we're learning. It's very, very difficult to get to that point, but everyone has to take these because that's what they know. So without taking a whole nother, we're going to have to wait till next time to deal with that, because there is an answer. But yes, who are doctors for? Who are medical institutions for? For all of us, which is 99.9% of people who believe we need doctors. We need that because God is not capable. We're going to look at all the different levels of belief. And it's not to criticize anyone, but I want us to be aware, what do we believe? When your client comes in, where are they at? You think you know where they're at, and they may profess something, but you're going to find out they're not really there, and that's okay. We work with people where they're at. I work with all my clients where they're at. And I want to share with you that why some, when they move to a higher level, they receive more power and more authority, but just the realization of that power and authority. But that's what this is going to. She would have had to take them because that's all we know. And then she began to tell how she's been receiving curses from the witch doctors and from the hospital doctors because they're losing patients. They're losing good customers because they're not going in for. St. Luke would have used all the natural things that he had around him to treat people. What is the purpose, in my mind, of a doctor? It was what my mother did. In my mind, she was a doctor. A doctor heals you because you are going to contract things. You're going to put things in your mouth that you shouldn't eat, and you're going to get weak and sick. And what should they do? They should first of all find out, why are you sick? I'm sure Luke would have done that. Where did this come from? Why are you sick? Like they do in doctors of Oriental medicine. Where does this come from? They trace it back. Then they clear the negative emotion or the lie you believe or what you're putting in your mouth. They try to correct that. And then they guide you on how you should eat from this point on if you want to get well and avoid that sickness in the future. It's a fabulous role that doctors have, and I believe my mother was one, because that's what she did every day of her life. When people came to her, they said, Mary, what should I do? They said, you should eliminate that from your diet, and you will see things. Now try this and this, and now keep doing this and avoid that. She would coach them and guide them. That's what I believe the role of a doctor is. Are they doing that now? Not at all. I had a friend who a young man discovered he had cancer in his intestines and cancer in his liver. They're connected, and they had half his intestines removed. And so he was so shook up, but he lived on junk food. And he was in the hospital saying, I know where this has come from. I live at McDonald's. 3 meals a day, I live there. And he knew it, and soda and fast foods was his life. And so he decided, I'm going to correct this. So when the doctor came in, first of all, after the operation, he was shocked to see that they served him a big bowl of ice cream, and there was some cookies, and there was other starches. That was like, he was just unbelievable how unnutritious it was. And he said, Doctor, what should I eat? How should I change my diet from now on so that I can preserve and not have this happen again? And the doctor said, he says, now this is just one doctor, I know, but think of what they're not learning in school. He said, you can eat whatever you want. It has no relevance to how you feel and how sick you are. It has no relevance. Now that's an extreme case, but there are many, many who believe that. There's no relevance. This is 40, 50 years ago, my mother fought this with people saying, no, it does make a difference. You are what you eat, and it does make a difference. So a little bit more, I have to bring it to this point. But that is the point of this study. This is just an introduction. God said, if you do not make them aware of the severity of this, you'll never open the door. We are opening the door to at least begin to consider. Because I'm telling you, most Americans do not consider that there's anything wrong with pharmaceuticals. So I'm coming with that point. We need to make people aware maybe there is something wrong and you need to begin to consider it. So this is I'm coming out in a very strong way to make a strong point, gradually trying to make you aware that it is something to consider. Because the use of pharmaceuticals in this country, both prescription and over-the-counter, have reached epic proportions. We are clearly the sickest and most unhealthy nation in the world, but we consume the highest amount of pharmaceuticals. These are real facts. Doctors are writing prescriptions now, in my experience, like never before in history in this country. Many of my clients have told me that they have just said to their doctor, I am feeling sad or I'm feeling depressed, and they quickly write them an antidepressant medicine. It's faster. Years ago, it was not this way. It's not exciting to learn that 30% of all women in this country are on what the medical profession labels, they cutely label it, the housewife cocktail. And it's made up of an antidepressant, an anxiety medicine, and a sleeping pill. And they take them, and I know at least 30% of women are on this. Many of my clients come in on this. I have had clients that were on this who actually began to shake and walk out when I suggested, maybe one day we can get you off of this cocktail. That's how upset they were about, they're so used to this, and it does something for them that's very, very powerful. And this is exactly where we're leading towards. This whole thing is leading towards that discussion. So this was the most powerful thing that God began to reveal to me that really, really not only frightened me, but opened my eyes. Now, these are true stories that I will show you that at least these medications, this has been, and it will continue, but this is my study, my godly study so far of what's happening with these drugs. So the first one, this was actually a good friend of mine. He was using an inhaler. And when he came in, we found out through the prayer that he had 999 trillion, which is an upside down 666, by the way. That number refers to something demonic. It's an upside down 666. He had 999 trillion curses. And as I'm praying with him, God spoke to me and said that there was a spirit attached to this medicine, the prednisone and cortisone. Very, very powerful. So I said to him, what is the purpose? Now I heard it, God spoke to me, and I didn't say anything. I said, what is the purpose of this medication? And he said, well, it's to open up my breathing passageways so that I can breathe. And I said, well, you'll be interested to know that the spirit attached to it is asphyxiating, which means what? Which is exactly what my partner died of this years ago. He didn't know better. But I know many people who, by taking this inhaler, they tell me that as you continue to take it, your passageways become smaller and smaller until you choke to death, until you are completely asphyxiated. And to find out, I was shocked. But the name of the spirit, when that comes into your mind, it's just so bizarre. But the spirit was asphyxiating. And that's what's happening to him. He's getting worse and worse and worse. He came back a month later, only to find out. Now, he knew, to your point, he knew that he was getting curses from this medication. And he continued to take it. Not only did he continue to intake it, he increased it. Now he has, a month later, he has vigintillion plus curses, which is an uncountable number coming from this same medication. Why did it get so strong? Because the enemy took him right into the courtroom and said, you see what your boy's doing? He's a professed Christian. He knows that this is causing him harm, and he's taking it, he's increasing what he's taking. And so now he is getting worse and worse. He's still using it. We'll have to explain that another time. But God, that is all. God reveals that in the prayer to your subconscious, and there is a way of communicating to find out what that is. That's how I know the exact number. I know the name of the spirit. God tells me, and then it's validated. So all of this has been validated by the Holy Spirit, and many of you know how that works. The next fellow was taking pantoprazole, and the purpose was to calm my esophagus. He was using it to calm down his esophagus. We learned that the spirit attached to it was closing my throat. He was taking losartan potassium. This was to lower blood pressure. The spirit attached to it was anxious thoughts. Very clever, right? What do anxious thoughts create? He was taking Nupro patch for his restless leg syndrome. The spirit attached to it was worry. What does worry create? Restless leg syndrome. Another gal was taking ropinirole. She had restless leg syndrome. She had taken it for so many years. She also had vigintillion plus, which is it's an uncountable number of curses. And the spirit attached to it was unexplainable. This woman was so uptight because she couldn't figure out anything in her life what direction to go in, and everything she had no answer. Anything he asked her was, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And she was living that constant state of nervousness that she was not causing, and it was behind. Those who eliminated these, it went away. The symptoms went away. Trazodone, to help me sleep. The spirit attached was restlessness. Valaclovir, sextillion curses, was for cold sores. This was a great one. For cold sores and herpes. The spirit attached was disgraced. What was the enemy's goal? Was to make her feel disgraced. See, these are things you're taking to help you with these things, right? Levothyroxine, to balance my thyroid and give me more energy. The spirit's name was exhausted, and that's what she felt all the time, was exhausted. Atorvastatin, to lower cholesterol. Increasing all levels of cholesterol was what's really happening. And this was all documented. That's what she said. That's what's happening. How come I take this medication, they tell me is going to lower my cholesterol is going up. This was a man suffering with cancer. He was taking capecitabine, which is a low-grade chemo, and the purpose, he tells me, was to kill cancer. He was not surprised to find out that the spirit attached was death. And they say, if you continue taking this chemo, the result is death. You will die. They just say you will prolong your life, but the result is death. It's actually quickening. According to his words, it makes me so sick, it's actually quickening my death. He was taking mebendazole to kill parasites, bacteria, fungus, and worms. The spirit was abnormalities. We learned it was actually multiplying the parasites, bacteria, and fungus and worms in his body. And he's documented, he said that's what they discovered when they went back like several months later. Everything had actually increased. Everything was fighting to kill was actually increasing, not just stopping, but increasing. Metformin to block cancer pathways to glucose. This is a very technical, highly researched drug. And it was actually, the spirit name was reopening the cancer pathways to glucose. Meaning, that's very technical, that in his case, glucose, we know, feeds cancer. 1 teaspoon of sugar can feed cancer for a month. And so they know that, the cancer industry knows this, and they say, well, we need to stop. Anytime glucose enters your body, this will stop it from reaching the cancer cells. It closes pathways that go to the cancer cells. And he was blown away to learn the name of the spirit was reopening cancer pathways to glucose. What does that mean? Your body naturally closes these pathways to keep the glucose. It's trying to protect you in every way possible. It will naturally try to protect your body from receiving from these, so it keeps the glucose from reaching the cancer cells. This drug was actually reopening the pathways that his body was naturally trying to close. He was taking oxaliplatin to slow or stop the cancer growth. The name of the spirit was kills everything in my body, which we know is true. That's what these drugs are so powerful. They literally wind up killing everything in your body. Like that's the way that my brother died. We have candesatarn. To lower my blood pressure, the spirit attached was stressing, which we know increases blood pressure. This is Jeff's story. This is actually about his cat. We realized this in prayer. He was taking a drug his cat had stopped eating. And the doctor's given him a drug, this Mirataz, and the purpose was to increase the appetite. And the result was a decreasing of the appetite until there was no appetite at all. We approached it a different way. We eliminated the drug. We found out what was the root cause of this, why this cat was dying. And we cleared that, and the cat is doing well. We just took a completely different route through prayer. This fellow Luke with the incredible mood swings. So he was getting decillion curses coming from lamotrigine, a mood stabilizer, and he was getting, and the name of the spirit attached, this blew his mind, was fits of rage. And as I told you, they were getting worse and worse and worse. So by taking this, he was actually increasing, the name of the spirit was fits of rage. And you say, well, what were these thoughts, what were these fits about? Well, there was another medication. It's like the spirits split their evil intent. He was getting decillion curses coming from Protandim, another mood stabilizer, and the spirit was condemning vindictive thoughts. These thoughts that he had against particular people is what would throw him into fits of rage. It's a long story about how he developed this anger towards particular women. It's because his father was so involved. His father was trying to help all these other women and began having affairs in the name of him helping them. And this was all the time that he lost from being able to spend with his father. And he became intensely full of hatred against women who would take time away from him that was devoted to his father. But they never left him. These thoughts would continue. Whenever he would think about it, it would drive him into these fits of rage. So the two spirits were working together to create these fits. The thoughts and the spirit of rage, the two together would create this. And so this is the mission that I'm on. I believe God will continue to reveal them. This is only these drugs. It's a limited study, but I'm sure it will increase. But the purpose of this example is just to invite you to ask God about what I'm taking. If you or someone who is on medication, ask God, is this acceptable for my body? Is there anything attached to it? Let him tell you. You don't need me to tell you. This is my story. These are the people I prayed with. I'd like to hear how God speaks to you about the people you pray with, because it's real. I can't make this up. I have no desire to search out these things. They came, and that's how people were healed, was through this. That would be like taking a glass of poison and praying the poison out of it. Can you do that? No. If I wanted to drink that Zip Fizz, can I pray over it and say, I'm taking out the effects of sucralose? Can I do that? No. We have no power. We are not mind-altering. We are not product-altering people. We do not have that authority to change the substance of a product. This is, I said in the beginning, this is my story. Right? Didn't I say that like 10 times? This is my story. This is what God has revealed to me over 10-year period. And he said, share it with others because they're not aware. If you can begin to consider, this is all about just begin to consider, because I told you many people walk out, and I was afraid of half of you would walk out when I even mentioned this, because it's been my experience. The enemy has us under a stronghold, believing it is the only way. I'm saying there is another way. That's what this whole presentation is about. Would you consider another way? Would you consider, as many of you have, considering full power of prayer, not dabbling in it, as many of us do, but the full power, because those who combine both never make it. When you're dabbling with evil, full power, no, because many people come in and they want to do both. We'll talk about this next time. You keep wanting to get there, so we will talk about what happens to those. Why are they either slower to get to their point, or they are dealing with other issues that they're not in complete victory. So you do this over and over every day, 10 hours a day, every day, you'll come to certain conclusions, and it becomes very, very real. These people are receiving victory. These people are still struggling. That's it. That's the point. That's my conclusion. And it's not like, well, this one made it. It really comes down to that. If it's keeping you alive, it would not be sin, right? Until you find an alternative, another way, you have to keep taking it. No one that comes into my office, I tell you have to get off of that. I say, when it's time, here's a good example. If you were to come in, most likely, because I do this with everyone, they bring in their medication, and we ask God, is this good? The person actually asks himself, you ask your body is a voltmeter and knows the frequency of everything on the planet. So your body knows whether or not it's good for you. You don't need me to tell you, right? So you would ask your own body, your own mind, is this good for my body? And your mind will tell you. So many times people bring in their medications and we test it, we say, and it says it's good for your body. And they're disappointed. I thought I could get off. I thought this might be bad. I want to get off it. I said, you're not ready yet. I said, let's pray, because we need to find out, where did this sickness come from? What have I said 1 million times in this group? We have to find the root. So until you find the root, whatever you're taking the prednisone for, until we find the root for that, you're not free to get off of it, because you're still attached to many people, once we clear the root, we test it again. This may take several sessions. Once we clear the root, we test it again, and it says it's no good for your body. And most of the time they can just stop. The powerful ones you have to wean off of. Those are usually the pain medications. You have to wean off of them, the powerful ones. But many you can just end once we clear the root. But you saw the deep end when you went into the swimming lesson. You saw there's where I'd like to achieve, but you start in the shallow end. You heard me say I want to begin very gradually, just opening your mind to the idea of what's happening in this country and why we are being so programmed. Just opening your mind, just work with me, just begin to consider it. I will take you slowly to the deep end, and you decide if you want to jump in. You don't have to. We're going to talk next time about many different layers of understanding. This is way more complicated than you think. There are many layers of understanding on where do we stand with the whole industry. But it's based by years and years of experiencing healing that many other people haven't. So you have to come to the point and say, why are there so many people experiencing healing? And God has shown me over the years, this is the difference. And it's the levels of belief. It all comes down to levels of belief. And the more we attach ourselves to the higher level, we will receive more. But the more we participate and we just limit God and we say, that's okay, God will work with it, God will take the poison out of it, and all this stuff we make up, that we limit God, instead of just saying, God, you have the power, you have given me the power and authority. That's where we're going. It's just an invitation to get there. People are at all different levels. You'll see next time we're at many, many, more than you imagine, different levels of belief about what do we do with this problem? What do we do with this consideration? But I find out the more that people find a way to choose trusting God more in any area of your life, you will find greater success, greater victory in that person's life. This happens to be just one area of healing that I found. Those that continue to dabble with the corrupt things that I've told you about will find negative results. They may cope with it, they may be dealing with it, but they're coping. They could be having so much more. We're supposed to be presenting the bigger picture. That's why I want to excite you guys. That's why I'm not on the streets talking, because I'd be talking to no one. At least there's an open door here. You guys said, I want the fullness of healing for people. If there's a better way to get it, I'd like to at least experiment with it. I'd like to try it. I'd like to hear more from God about it. You don't necessarily have to hear more from me. But we warn people, but we see that whenever we involve ourselves with anything that is demonic, there will be side effects. I have people who refuse to cleanse certain things out of their home that they know are demonic, and they continue to suffer either physically, spiritually, monetarily, emotionally, and they just will not let go of this particular thing, right? So my granddaughter, she knows how we feel about Disney and how all that's been exposed with Disney and how demonic it is. Walt Disney was a 33rd degree Mason. I think you all are aware of that. And everything about his movies have influence with the demonic. It just happens that many people who come in and we're praying and they're receiving curses from going to Disney. They're receiving curses from Disney objects in their house, from watching movies. Many curses coming from people watching Disney movies because they're just very, very demonic. So she said to me, my girlfriend want for her graduation, really wanted to go to Disney World, and she wants me to go. Can I go? I said, no. Now that you know, because she sits under my teaching, you know that it's evil, you've experienced it, do not go. I have had very bad experience with trying to dabble with things that I knew were bad and found out I did anyway. So I said, it's not a good idea. So behind my back, she went anyway because she didn't want to say no and she didn't want to disappoint her best friend. So she goes anyway. So last night she's telling me, she says, Grandpa, she says, I have to make a confession, but I need your help. She said, it wound up that I went to Disney this past weekend. And for 2 days, and she said, I don't remember ever getting a headache. And when I entered Disney, I began to get a headache. And it got worse and worse and worse until I was nauseous, migraine headache, throwing up. She said, I'm sure I picked up something from going to Disney. So why was it the attack was so bad? Because she knew it was bad and she went anyway. So she has confessed that. And the healing is her headache is subsiding, but I'm sure she's going to come in this afternoon and we're going to cleanse that out of her. But anytime we dabble in something and we say it's okay because we want it to be okay, realize what you're talking about. That you're fooling. Who are you fooling? You're definitely not fooling Satan because he's the problem. He's the one that entices you to go to Disney, and then he's the one that say, you see what you did? And he'll haul your butt right into the courtroom and say, look what your Christian girl down there did. And he throws the book at you. He's the one that's the problem. God just tries to make us aware of what's happening so we can be free from oppression.